Howdy ho, everybody. This is Postmortem Nightshade, one half of your wonderful, amazing, charming, ghastly ghost birds, and joining me this evening is...
Slathro, how's it going? Woo!
Woohoo! Yay. We are so glad to be with y'all here this week. If you aren't in the loop, we started our DC animated movies discussion. So last week we did part 1. This week we're moving on to part 2 since there are so many we want to talk about. It's going to be a several part series. But this week, Slothro, do you want to let them know what movies we'll be discussing this evening?
But of course. So the movies we are discussing is Justice League War from 2014. We are going over as well Son of Batman from the same year, which there's some of these from like the same year, which I'm like, man, they were cranking out movies during like the late 2010s. We've got Batman vs. Robin from 2015, and we've also got Batman Bad Blood from 2016, as well as Justice League vs. Teen Titans from 2016. My bad. And then there's that one.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've got a great set of movies on the docket here. Please subscribe, leave a like if you guys enjoy this content. As always, we invite you to leave comments down below giving us your rankings, your thoughts, but we also like to give a spoiler warning for these videos. We do always encourage you to go check out the films, especially as we've been talking about these animated DC movies, so go check them out. However, I know a lot of people like to listen to content before they decide if they want to watch a movie or not. So yeah, just spoiler warning for this video. But getting started here, we've got Justice League War, and Slothro, what are your thoughts on that one?
So this movie is, I don't even know. I would say this video is going to be interesting because a lot of these movies came out around the same time, and a lot of them not only animation wise look similar, but they all kind of fit a similar vibe. So Justice League War, I feel like, is the beginning of that vibe, and it's got a lot more of a, not saying the prior movies weren't gritty, but this movie kind of starts off a way more kind of grittier like movie tone. And so this movie in particular is about almost like the readjusting origin of the Justice League with Darkseid as the main villain in this movie. So it's very interesting from, I guess, the perspective of Darkseid being like introduced that quick. But you kind of get to see how Batman, Green Lantern, Superman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, like all of them interact and meet together. And I think, honestly, a lot of the movie is between Batman and Green Lantern, which is not usually the combo you would think of. But I think they tried to do a lot of things different with this movie, especially when it comes to like some of the characters' mannerisms. So Batman is usually pretty quiet in most of his iterations, and he's very quiet here. But in this movie in particular, I don't know what it was, but he's very, like, he loves to do, like, a 4D chess kind of thing to where he, like, always knows what's going on. And so I feel like it's a very interesting movie, especially from, I guess, kind of seeing this new, I guess, iteration of the Justice League building up. But I guess, what were your initial thoughts on this whole movie going through it?
Yeah, so, like Slothro said, this was kind of kicked off like this reintroduction or like more of a cohesive DC animated timeline that they were going for. And we talked about Flashpoint last week. That was really kind of the start of it. But like Slothro said, this was their introduction of the Justice League in that timeline. This was very different from Marvel. Like, I think, if you watched the MCU movies, it took a long time to see very much of Thanos, who is I'm pretty sure that Darkseid was the inspiration for Thanos. So, obviously, personally, I like Thanos a little better than Darkseid, but comment below who's your favorite between the two giant purple fighting guys. But yeah, I think that they set Darkseid up well enough. He kind of feels a little one-dimensional in this timeline. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe that's my preference for Thanos, is that his moral quandaries and moral thoughts are so much more compelling, as Darkseid is just like a conqueror type character. But yeah, it's a cool start formation to the Justice League.
I was just agreeing with you that Darkseid, I think this is honestly the weakest, even compared to like some of the more kid-friendly versions of like Justice League. I think this is the weakest version of Darkseid we have. He's a glorified like plot device in this movie. He's not really a character, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they could have the writing on him is weak, which is weird because the writing on the rest of the Justice League I liked. I really liked the writing and the animation of the origin story we get for Cyborg was what I thought was good. And like Sothro said, gritty is a great way to describe this cohesive timeline of DC. It's very weird. A lot of these are actually PG-13. I think there's only a couple that we're going to talk about in the upcoming episodes that are rated R, but they are very bloody, very gory for this kind of like animated style. So these are definitely, I would say, more teen slash adult DC animated films. And just in the idea of a timeline, it is very confusing if you do not watch these movies in the order that they're supposed to be watched. You're going to be left behind and be confused by some things that are happening. There are some that are better about being like standalone movies you can watch, but through this like timeline of DC animated films, you definitely kind of need to watch them in order to not be confused. Green Lantern, I thought was fine in this movie. He's definitely like the quippy character, which was interesting because what I remember Green Lantern watching in like the Justice League cartoon growing up was that was more of the Flash's character. But yeah, so Green Lantern takes the Flash's part kind of in this movie. I thought there were some generally funny moments. This is, I would call, a very serious and stoic Justice League. They're definitely moving away from that more lighthearted or kid-friendly Justice League for sure. So that was mostly my thoughts about Justice League War. Yeah, a fine enough, good enough Justice League start.
And now that you even bring that up, that's kind of what I was thinking, that like a lot of the personalities almost switched. So
Yeah.
like you mentioned, the Flash and Green Lantern's personality switched. And Superman even in this too. Like what you said, he's very gritty, very serious in this movie. So
Kind of reminds me of a Man of Steel from like Zack Snyder's version of Superman.
yes, very, very much so. And then that kind of leads in. So we had this movie, and it comes out in 2014. And then we literally get another movie set in the same universe in the same year as that movie comes out. And this is The Son of Batman. And this one is. I actually think that this is the first introduction to the character Damian Wayne. I feel like in any of the at least like animation IPs. Like I think he had been in
Yeah.
the comic books for a while, but to actually be on screen, I think this was his first debut of anything. And so I feel like I think they did a good job with this one. I will say when we talk about one of the next movies coming up, I think I preferred it more than this one. Which I think is the Bad Blood movie. But this one does a good job of introducing, I guess, Batman, if he were to have a kid, which he does have a kid, with one of the members of what is known as the Court of Owls. And so you get to see a lot of Deathstroke in this movie. You get to see a little bit of Ra's al Ghul in this movie as well. So you get to see some pretty cool, iconic villains make an appearance. And you get to see the dynamics, of course, between Batman, the lady he had, I forgot her name. I think I actually have it
Talia
here.
al Ghul.
Yeah, Talia al Ghul, and you get to see it between Damian, Batman, and Talia. And I would say overall, it's a very interesting movie. I would say there were parts of it that I enjoyed, but there were also parts of it that I thought were kind of weak, if I'm being honest. But I think overall, for like a starting introduction to at least a new character that hasn't been on screen, I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I thought it was a good introduction to Damien. I do feel like his character in this kind of run of the DC animated timeline, he's kind of like your like the best I can compare it to, and take this like I'm gonna try to explain this well. Ahsoka in like the first season and a half of the Clone Wars is kind of like this annoying, bratty, like sidekick character who's pretty like one dimensional, and she gets more layers as the Clone Wars goes on and as other TV shows and movies go on. And that's definitely, I think, the case with Damien. When he's introduced, he's this very annoying, bratty, one dimensional character. And I would say he's probably the most aggressive and arrogant Robin of all four that Batman has over the comics, even in comparison to Jason Todd. He's definitely, in my opinion, the most annoying. But side tangent here. Um, these DC animated films got some crazy OP actors to voice their characters. And in this movie in particular, they got Giancarlo Esposito, who is most famous for his role in Breaking Bad. He's actually the voice of Ra's al Ghul, which his voice work is so great. It's just so crazy to me how they get like, and this is like not just in this movie, but this happens a few times where they get these crazy talented people to come do the voice work. So I just thought that was super awesome. But in a more serious note, I definitely think this movie needs a trigger warning. As Lothro mentioned, we get introduced to Talia. If you're not familiar with her storyline from the comic books and her relation to Batman and Bruce Wayne, the conception of Damian is a very, very obviously non-consensual SA. So very serious, very dark part of the DC storyline. Honestly, I felt like they kind of brush over it a little bit. They do kind of try to address it more in Dark Apocalypse War, but it definitely feels like they don't really talk about it that much. This movie is, as I'd like to remind you, PG-13, but even with that PG-13 rating, there is no pulling back or hiding of the cards when it comes to these dark scenes, these heavy themes. So just wanted to warn everyone out there, if you haven't seen this one yet, be forewarned, this movie does have topics of SA, and the animation style in here, absolutely brutal. We turned up the gritty, violent meter from Justice League War on this movie. It's extremely violent, extremely, extremely bloody. I would classify this as PG-13 plus. And I don't know if it's because it's animated that it kind of gets a pass or something, but yeah, anyway, be forewarned. This is a very bloody, violent, gory movie. So yeah, definitely not like a kid-friendly PG-13 in my opinion.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. Does this movie have the gun nuns in them, or is that the second iteration in Damian's story?
That is actually the third one. That's the one that you said you like the best. That's Bad Blood.
Okay, yeah. I was about to say, I was like, I remember one of his movies has the funny nun scene in it, and I was like, I don't know which one that is.
Yeah, I love that scene. I actually have notes to talk about that later. Slothro, I just was curious, that fight with Deathstroke, what did you think about how gory and violent that is near the end of that movie?
I was definitely I was definitely surprised with. It's just weird because in most Justice League properties that you watch up to this point, especially like the very well known classic Justice League, you don't really get a whole lot of like violent scenes like that up until like, you know, like maybe something like Flashpoint or even like the live action Batman movies. But that that was kind of like another level of kind of showing the audience and like fans of DC like, hey, we got some more stuff coming down the pipeline, and we're not willing, or we're not. It's not that we're not willing. We are not holding back any more punches. So we're actually going to try to put some of these scenes that you see in comics to screen and try to see if they can tell the stories that they're trying to tell in the best way possible. And I definitely think that with that whole fight scene playing out, it was cool looking, but I was definitely surprised with how gritty and violent it did become, especially just on a more animated side when they're so used to animating more friendly animations for DC on that side of the aisle. But I think it was I think it was very well animated overall though.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think it's most comparable to, I mentioned in our previous episode in The Dark Knight Returns Part 2, then the Joker's death being very graphic and the sound design and the animation is very violent. And they seem to have taken a lot more inspiration from the Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller run of comics and stories, and kind of tied that violence and gory grittiness into these movies. I would say it's different than that style, but it kind of seems to be the inspiration would be my thought. But yeah, I agree. I think it was surprising, but I didn't dislike it. It's something to get used to if you're kind of more used to the 90s Justice League stuff. But that actually takes us into 2015. We've got Batman versus Robin. What are your feelings there, Slothro?
So kind of going from this movie to that one, it's kind of I don't know, it tries to build up onto what the first one does when it comes to like explaining Damian's story. And I would say it's all right. It's not I think for me personally, I think it's the weakest of the three movies. And it's not in a bad way. Like, the animation's really pretty. The story can be interesting at times. I'm pretty sure in this movie you get to see more interactions between Alfred and Damian. And seeing their interactions is always unique. And especially his with Nightwing as well. But I think overall, just the overall vibe of this movie, for me, it didn't hit as hard as like the first movie did, or especially the third one does, where you kind of get more of a whole full experience. But I definitely think kind of getting to see Owlman in this one as well, I think was kind of cool. Just getting to see the Court of Owls more in these movies is pretty cool, because I think up to this point, at least in like the animated sphere, you don't hear hardly at all about like the Court of Owls. Like maybe they're mentioned like once or twice in like an off episode of something, but to be like this up front in like the story was very not common until these movies. And I think so like for what they did overall in these movies, I feel like they did a great job kind of keeping the mystery of the Court of Owls. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to say Slothro mentioned that Talia was part of the Court of Owls. I know there is connection there between she's originally from the League of Assassins, but I know that they do have ties with the Court of Owls. I just wanted to throw that in there, kind of try to
that
prevent any
that's my
comments
bad.
about that.
Sorry about that. That's my bad.
No,
They
no
work
worries.
together. They're buddies. They work together.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know that we can get we do appreciate the fact checks in the comment. But yes, I did just want to say yes, I do remember they are connected. Talia usually works with the League of Assassins, but yes, they're connected here, and we kind of get this. It's interesting because they choose a very specific. It's not very I mean, it is kind of similar to the comics. But the Court of Owls is a really cool villain. I really think it's so hard to do like it's almost like it's almost like an Illuminati inspired type villain. And I really like the Talon character in this. He's voiced by Jeremy Sisto, who does a phenomenal job. And I just really like the psychological games that are played. That's really what the Court of Owls is like, I think best known for, honestly. And along lines I mentioned earlier about OP voice castings, Weird Al Yankovic is the voice of Dollmaker, which blew my mind because honestly, I think that Dollmaker is one of the darker villains in the Batman catalog. So that voice casting just kind of blew my mind. But anyway, just wanted to throw that in there as a fun fact. But I love the Court of Owls. They got a pretty cool animated depiction, in my opinion, in this film. Great fight scenes in here. I think the Court of Owls attack on Wayne Manor is also really cool. We do get a little bit more Nightwing in here. And I do actually appreciate that they try and have some character growth from Damian. It is pretty small throughout this film, but I think the ending, the writers were really trying to move this character forward by having him trying to be more humble, a little bit more willing to go on the path to become like what he sees as his destiny, which is to become Batman. So yeah, I did appreciate that, but I thought this was a good movie. I think honestly, I liked it. I don't know. Batman versus Robin and Son of Batman are on pretty equal footing for me, just because I think the Court of Owls are cool, but I also love Deathstroke, so they're pretty similar in my mind. But let us know in the comments which of those two is your favorite. But that takes us into sounds like Slothro and I share a favorite of this kind of mini Batman animated trilogy here. We've got Batman Bad Blood from 2016.
Yes, this movie I think is definitely the biggest banger out of the three. Like I really enjoyed the Court of Owls we had in the prior movie, but I really enjoyed the way this went, because this is kind of like this almost, because Superman has like his own, like I guess you can call it like Superman family, and this is like the animated version of like where the Bat family kind of comes into play, at least in this new universe they're making. So you get to see a lot of the different heroes that you don't normally get to see. So you get to see Batwoman, you get to see Batwing as well, and Nightwing and Damian, of course, are there along with Bruce Wayne. And so it's just really cool to get to see all of them kind of work together and kind of come together in like, not necessarily like an Avengers sense, but in more of kind of like a unique like superhero dynamic between all of them. And I thought the fight scenes were really cool, and I thought the interactions, especially towards the end with especially the fight scene with I'm remembering Batman and Nightwing, I thought that was really fun to watch, and that was probably one of my highlights of that whole movie, if I'm being honest. So but yeah, what did you think about this movie overall?
Yeah, I am a big fan of the comic book run where this story seems to draw inspiration. There's a comic book run where Dick Grayson takes over as Batman when Bruce Wayne is believed to be dead, and then Damian Wayne is his Robin. So if you liked the dynamic of that in this movie, there is a longer comic book run of that story. If you're interested, I would highly recommend. But yeah, I really liked that element. I like the introduction of Batwoman. like Slothro said, we're getting the Bat family here. So we have Batwing in this movie, who I really enjoyed, and yeah, this movie is just a good movie. It has good fight scenes. It's got Talia al Ghul comes back and then also brings the Mad Hatter with her, which is like a super low level, obscure Batman villain. But yeah, he gets decapitated. Again, these movies are violent, so just be aware of that. Um, but as we mentioned earlier, this has one of my favorite like DC animated lines. So Batwoman and Nightwing are like doing like a attack on this church, and at the beginning of the fight scene, Batwoman says nuns with M60s and katanas, and then Nightwing responds, that would make them nunjas. So yeah, nunjas is an iconic phrase for villainous nuns. But yeah, super funny, super iconic. I really enjoyed this movie. So yeah, give it a watch if you haven't. I think you might. I think you might have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. This movie, I think overall, if you really enjoy watching like the Bat Family, I think this is a really fun, like, kind of seeing a lot of them kind of have like a sprinkle of origin on each one, but then kind of seeing them all dynamically interact with each other. It's just a really fun movie to watch. So I'd highly recommend it, and the animation, of course, is really good. And this leads actually into another one that I actually really like, at least like the premise, because I'm a big fan of the Teen Titans. So we have Justice League versus Teen Titans, and so once again we have Damian Wayne as our protagonist, but this time we get to see his interactions and dynamic when he joins up with the not the Young Justice, what am I saying? The Teen Titans. So getting to see like Starfire and Raven, I really enjoyed, because in the original Teen Titans TV show, they go into Raven's origin, and they do that again in this one, but they give it a lot more of like almost like a relatability in terms of like relating it more to the character than they did in the TV show, which they had like, the father, of course, being the main baddie in that TV show, and he is in this one too, but I just feel like they flesh it out a lot more for like a normal audience in this movie than they do for something like in the Teen Titans TV show. But I thought it was fun kind of getting to see them all kind of freak out when they're like, oh crap, we gotta fight the Justice League, we gotta fight our mentors, and then they all come and work together, and I really enjoyed even the interaction between Raven and Damian. I think they did a really, really good job with taking someone as like brash as Damian and someone who is a lot more gothic like Raven, and like working that together. I thought they did a really good job with that in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I like their I mean, over time, they develop a love story, and like Slothra said, Raven's more shy, introverted nature does help lessen Damien's brashness, and she brings out a different side in him. So I thought that was a cool take to, I guess, go with this. This is a different version of the Teen Titans. So, like Slothra said, if you grew up with the traditional Teen Titans TV show from like the early 2000s, this is a different version. So here we have Starfire, Blue Beetle, Beast Boy, and Raven is the core team, and then Nightwing is like an occasional pop in, and then he brings in obviously Damien, and normally Cyborg is a part of the team. But he is kind of considered part of the Justice League in this DC timeline. So that's definitely a big difference there. And then also, usually Robin, Dick Grayson as Robin is part of the team, but here we kind of see him in the Nightwing form interacting with the Teen Titans. This is another PG-13 DC movie with very dark themes, dark backstories. Like Slothro said, we get more fleshed out information about Raven's history and her origin. And essentially, the way they present it in this film is that her mom is kind of part of this satanic cult, and she essentially sees herself as a sacrifice and sleeping with Satan, which is Raven's dad. I believe his name is Trigon. There we go. I found the reference. His name is Trigon, but he's kind of portrayed as like Satan in this DC timeline. But yeah, the fight scenes are really cool. So the reason the Justice League fight the Teen Titans is because they've been taken over by Trigon, it's interesting to see how often this DC animated timeline, we get a lot of like the teen characters fighting like the adult Justice League characters, like Batman versus Robin, and then again here in Justice League versus the Teen Titans. So that is definitely a concept they explore a lot. But yeah, I really like the animation and like the, I guess, production design development of Trigon's world when they go to defeat him. The fight between Damien and Ra's al Ghul is really cool. So yeah, I enjoyed this movie actually. I like it a lot. I thought it was a solid start to bringing the Teen Titans kind of into this animated timeline. So yeah, definitely a fun ride that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I definitely think they did a really good job with this movie, and it's since it's a standalone movie, like it's a part of this timeline, but you could easily watch it as its own standalone movie. Because I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun watch, especially being a fan of the Teen Titans. So, but yeah, this kind of leads to the conclusion of this episode when it comes to these movies. I would say out of all of these movies, I think, like I said earlier, I think my favorite is Batman Bad Blood and Justice League versus Teen Titans. I feel like they both do a really phenomenal job, and the animation is really cool. Although it is hard because I am a really big fan of Deathstroke because I think he's cool. But I would say for me personally, those would probably be my two picks for my favorite movies of these few.
Yeah, I agree with Slothro. Those would be my two favorite picks. And like Slothro mentioned, Justice League versus the Teen Titans is one you could watch by itself. I mean, they don't really touch that much on like Damien's backstory with Batman all that much besides him like knowing Nightwing and stuff. But yeah, it's a good standalone. Justice League War is a good standalone. You really probably should watch Son of Batman, Batman versus Robin, and Batman Bad Blood in order. I think that will help you be the least confused, make the most sense. But yeah, this is a all of these have the same animation style. It's a solid animation style. It's dark, it's gritty, it's violent, it's bloody, and it still gets that PG-13 rating in every single one. So yeah, if you're interested, please do check these movies out. But we appreciate you guys joining us. Leave your comments below letting us know which of these is your favorite. Do you enjoy these movies? What are your thoughts on them? But yes, thank you so much. We look forward to talking more DC with you guys next week. As always, I'm gonna plug my co-host Slothro. He is doing such amazing work on his gaming channel. I so loved the games that he played in his most recent demo video. There's a lot of like really fun and interesting concepts in each of those games. So please go give that video a watch. As always, check out the Slime Rancher 2 content. It is so good. I love it so much. And the Resident Evil Requiem, please check out those videos. They are all up. He covers the whole video game, so it's all great. But yes, leave him a like, leave him a subscribe, and we really appreciate you all being with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. And of course, I'd love to plug my other co-host, or I guess the number one host, Postmortem Nightshade. She does a phenomenal job when it comes to movie analysis. She actually does a really cool analysis on a movie she got to watch recently, which is a really fun family drama. So if you're really into that genre of movie, or into just, I guess, any type of, if you're into movies, you will definitely love the content you'll see over on Postmortem Nightshade's channel. She does a phenomenal job when it comes to giving you very clear, coherent, and concise feedback on what the movie's about, and also just her overall thoughts if you should go and watch it or not. And so I'd highly recommend going and checking her content out.
Well, thank you, Slothro. I appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye!
Bye!